There are moments in a league's evolution when the smallest comments carry outsized weight, when what isn't said matters just as much as what is. That's where this story begins, not with a single quote, but with a pattern that has followed Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark from college basketball into the early stages of their professional careers. The rivalry narrative didn't just happen on its own. It has been built slowly, reinforced by silence, timing, and missed chances to redirect the conversation. At USA Basketball Camp, Angel Reese was given a simple prompt: name teammates who stood out to her, players who made an impact on her experience. In a matter of seconds, she delivered thoughtful, specific praise. Chelsea Gray's creativity with the ball, Alyssa Thomas's relentless energy, Aaliyah Boston's work on the interior and the way she establishes position. These were not generic answers. They were detailed observations that reflected real engagement and respect. And yet, one name was absent. Caitlin Clark, the most prominent guard in the gym, the player whose passing and spacing defined large portions of those same practices, was never mentioned. In isolation, that might seem insignificant. Athletes don't always name every teammate. Interviews move quickly. But context is everything, and context is what makes this omission linger. Clark wasn't just another guard at camp. She was the focal point of attention, the player whose court vision and shooting gravity reshaped how defenses reacted in scrimmages. She was also Reese's teammate in that setting, sharing possessions, sharing the floor, working toward the same goal. When an interview includes specific shout-outs and one conspicuous exclusion, it invites scrutiny whether that was the intent or not. This wasn't the first time Reese found herself at the center of a narrative crossroads involving Clark. Earlier in the WNBA season, a game between the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky became a flashpoint for larger conversations about fan behavior, player treatment, and media responsibility. Allegations surfaced online that inappropriate chants were directed toward Reese. The league took the matter seriously and initiated a review, as it should. In the days that followed, the story grew well beyond the game itself, fueled by speculation, social media amplification, and a lack of clarity about what had actually occurred inside the arena. When Reese was asked about the situation afterward, she chose a careful path. She expressed support for the league's process without offering detailed commentary on her own experience. From one perspective, that's understandable. Players are often advised to let investigations play out. From another, it was a moment where a clear, first-hand statement could have calmed the waters early. Instead, the absence of specificity allowed the narrative to harden before facts fully emerged, leaving fan bases and players alike caught in the fallout. These moments matter because narratives, once set, are remarkably difficult to undo. Reese and Clark have been framed as opposing forces since their college days, most notably after the national championship game that crystallized their rivalry in the public imagination. Every subsequent interaction, every quote, every non-quote, gets filtered through that lens. By the time both players arrived at USA Basketball Camp, the storyline was already waiting for them. Camp represented something rare: a neutral environment, shared goals, and a chance to reset. This was not the WNBA grind, not a rivalry game with playoff implications, not a social media battlefield. It was a controlled space designed to build chemistry and evaluate talent. For observers, it was an opportunity to see whether the tension that defined their past would soften under a different context. On the court, there were no visible issues. They ran sets together. They shared possessions. They functioned like professionals. That's what makes the interview afterwards so consequential. Reese didn't need to make a grand statement. She didn't need to declare friendship or rewrite history. A single acknowledgement of Clark's game, even a brief one, would have shifted the tone. It would have signaled that whatever competitive edge exists between them doesn't preclude respect. It would have given the media a different angle to explore, one rooted in coexistence rather than conflict. Instead, the silence did the opposite. It kept the old questions alive. Was it intentional? Was it personal? Was it strategic? Reese is not unaware of how these moments are interpreted. She's media savvy, active in shaping her own narrative, and fully conscious of the spotlight she occupies. That awareness is what makes the omission feel less accidental and more deliberate, whether or not that was her intention. For Clark, this dynamic has followed her relentlessly. In a limited number of professional games before injury interrupted her season, she became the focal point of constant debate. Physical defense, officiating scrutiny, fan behavior, and media saturation all converged around her presence. Every Fever game felt like an event, and every event seemed to produce another controversy. That pace is unsustainable for any player, let alone a rookie navigating her first season. This isn't about assigning blame to one individual. It's about recognizing how quickly the sports discourse can become trapped in cycles that don't serve the game. Reese had multiple moments where a small adjustment in messaging could have eased tensions, not erased rivalry, but softened its edges. Clark, for her part, has largely stayed measured, letting her play speak while absorbing the weight of unprecedented attention. As the league looks ahead, this unresolved tension carries consequences. When Chicago and Indiana meet again, the storyline will already be written before tip-off. When awards discussions surface, comparisons will be inevitable. When USA Basketball makes future roster decisions, the subtext will linger. These players don't control every narrative, but they do influence them, sometimes with a single sentence or its absence. At some point, the league benefits most when its brightest stars are allowed to compete without every interaction being framed as personal animosity. Professional respect doesn't require closeness. It requires acknowledgement. It requires understanding that the growth of women's basketball depends on expanding the conversation, not narrowing it to one rivalry endlessly revisited. So the question isn't whether Angel Reese was obligated to praise Caitlin Clark. She wasn't. The question is whether choosing not to, in that moment, was worth reinforcing a narrative that continues to overshadow both of them. Because once these stories take hold, they don't fade quietly. They resurface, again and again, until someone decides to change the tone. As the next season approaches, that decision remains unresolved, and the league, once more, will be watching.